In what has been one of the most unusual presidential elections in the history of the United States of America, we have finally reached Election Day, November 5th, 2024, leading into Election Night. Today is the day where millions of Americans will make their voices heard when they go to the polls and cast their vote for who will be the next president of the United States. Will it be current Vice President Kamala Harris or the 45th and former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump? The polls thus far have remained extremely tight, and we are expecting an incredibly close election that will likely go late into the evening and maybe even early into Wednesday morning. But I guess that's why we're all here, aren't we? To watch and find out. Election Night 2024 officially starts right now.
But we have to take back our country. We have to win. We're going to win, and we're going to make America great again. That's all there is to it.
Let us show each other and the world who we are and what we stand for.
Welcome to Election Night 2024. The way this is going to work is I'll be taking you hour by hour, poll closing by poll closing, in a simulation of the 2024 presidential election night. Throughout the evening, I'll be making projections of how I believe the evening is going to go down. These projections are all made by myself in combination of some factors such as latest polling data, most current polls, electoral trends, political markets, early voting reports, past election analysis, and more. I've put a lot of countless hours of hard work and determination into this election night, trying to get this as authentic and accurate as possible. So if you could please give the video a like and click subscribe and share it with your friends and family, I would greatly appreciate you doing that. With that being said, let's officially welcome you to my official 2024 Election Night prediction. We've arrived at 7 o'clock on the East Coast, and we are getting our first round of presidential poll closings of the night in the following states. The very important battleground state of Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. And with that, the polls have officially closed, and we can now make our first projections of the night. Unsurprisingly, the state of Georgia and its 16 electoral votes we are calling as too close to call. Georgia, a state that was narrowly won by President Biden in 2020 by only 0.24% of the vote, and was won by Trump in 2016 by just a little over 5% of the vote. It is expected to be one of the closest watched states tonight. And the first state call we can make for the election, we have the state of Kentucky with its 8 electoral votes. We can project the state will be won by Donald Trump. The home state of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and current Democratic Governor Andy Beshear, tonight Kentucky goes for Donald Trump. Right nearby Kentucky, in the state of Indiana, the Hoosier state, with its 11 electoral votes, we can project Donald Trump will be the winner there. 11 electoral votes for Donald Trump coming from Indiana. We can also project that South Carolina and its 9 electoral votes will also be won by the former President Donald Trump. South Carolina, home to Nikki Haley, Donald Trump's one-time Republican challenger in the presidential primary last winter, has voted for Donald Trump here tonight. And our first call tonight that we can make for the Vice President Harris, with her carrying the state of Vermont and its 3 electoral votes. Vermont, of course, home to Independent Senator Bernie Sanders. Tonight it is won by the Vice President. And lastly, in the state of Virginia and its 13 electoral votes, an interesting call here that we can call Virginia as too close to call. Too close to call in the state of Virginia. Virginia, a state that Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump by 10 points in 2020, we are calling and categorizing as too close to call, due in large part due to the election of Governor Glenn Youngkin in 2021, and early promising polling and early voting numbers that are giving Republicans optimism in the state and hoping to be able to flip the state red. We're going to count all the votes and wait and see how Virginia will vote tonight. With that, our first state calls of the night as we look at the electoral map, where President Donald Trump has taken a very narrow lead over Vice President Kamala Harris in the race to 270 electoral votes, with Trump sitting at 28 and Harris sitting at 3. Certainly, we have a long way to go until we get a clearer picture of which of these two candidates is leading and favored to be the next president of the United States. Now we are going to take a closer look at the key states where the polls have just closed that we previously just covered. We're going to look at the vote that's coming in and tell you what we can at this time. In the state of Georgia and its 16 electoral votes, Only 1% of the vote is reporting at this time, and Donald Trump has started off to an early lead with 62.8% of the vote to Harris's 36.6%. There really is not too much to take away from this number, as only one small county in Georgia, called Lawrence County, is expected to come in right now at this time. There are a lot of smaller counties throughout Georgia that will vote for Trump, but there are heavy population centers in Georgia that overpower said county, so we're going to have to wait and see and count the votes before we make any significant calls in the state. Similarly, in the state of Virginia and its 13 electoral votes, Donald Trump holds a narrow lead over Kamala Harris there as well, with 53.6% of the vote to Trump and 45.8% for Kamala Harris. That vote is coming out of Halifax County and is expected to be a Trump county when all the votes are counted, similar to in Georgia. Virginia is too close to call, with a long way to go as well. It'll be interesting to watch because Virginia is a state that Republicans feel they have a good shot at, even though it was not a swing state in 2020. But Republicans are feeling very optimistic that they may be able to flip the state or at least make it competitive, and that could be indicative of a greater trend for Trump on election night. But we're going to have to count the votes and wait and see. Democrats are certainly hoping Harris can put Virginia away quickly in the night, as if she's running up the score well in Virginia, maybe that could be a sign that she is in for a very good night. But again, that also remains to be seen. For now, both Georgia and Virginia are too close to call. It is 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and we have some more poll closings to tell you about, including the all-important battleground state of North Carolina. Also, states with polls closing in this hour are the states of Ohio and West Virginia. Let's take you right into what projections we can make at this time. In the state of North Carolina and its 16 electoral votes, we are categorizing that state as too close to call. Leading up until Election Day, the polling in North Carolina has been extremely close, well under the margin of error, and is expected to be very close tonight as well. Donald Trump won the state in 2020 by 1.3% of the vote, and in 2016 by 3.7% of the vote. Certainly one of the top battleground states to watch for tonight. And in the state of Ohio and its 17 electoral votes, the home state of Donald Trump's running mate J.D. Vance, is too early to call. We can't say that it is exactly a toss-up state, but we are waiting for more information out of the state of Ohio before we can officially make a call. Donald Trump did win the state in 2020 and 2016 by 8 points, and everything thus far in this election cycle, polling has included showing that Donald Trump is favored to do so and win the state once again. Ohio, too early to call. Lastly, the state of West Virginia and its 4 electoral votes we can officially project will be won by former President Donald Trump. This is not much of a surprise, as West Virginia was the Trump's largest margin of victory in any state in the country in both 2020 and 2016, and it is likely expected to be Trump's largest margin of victory in a state tonight as well. Following the West Virginia call, the electoral map is looking like right now. Former President Donald Trump has 32 electoral votes after winning Kentucky, Indiana, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Vice President Kamala Harris currently has 3 electoral votes after winning the state of Vermont. And now we're going to take a closer look at the states that are too close to call or too early to call. In the state of North Carolina and its 16 electoral votes, only 1% of the vote is currently reporting, and Donald Trump is off to a lead of 75.6% to Kamala Harris's 22.5%. The vote is reportedly coming entirely out of the Trump-friendly county called Allegheny County. We have a long ways to go in North Carolina, certainly one to keep an eye out for. Now to Ohio and its 17 electoral votes. Currently, Ohio has 5% of the vote reporting, and its Vice President Harris out to an early lead over former President Trump at 74.1% to 24.8%. Most of this early vote is coming from Franklin County, which is where Columbus is, and from Athens County, which is a traditional, very Democratic county in the state of Ohio. We fully expect these numbers to trickle down throughout the night. We also have an update from the key states from the 7 p.m. poll closings, starting with the state of Georgia. There is now 8% of the vote reporting in the state of Georgia, and Vice President Harris has taken a very narrow lead over former President Trump with 51.1% to 47.8%. A few votes from Baldwin and Sumter counties, which are smaller, close counties that Biden narrowly won in 2020, have come in to boost Harris's totals. We still have a long way to go in Georgia, and we're going to have to wait and see how this unfolds. We are also up to 6% of the vote reporting in the state of Virginia, where former President Donald Trump is leading Vice President Kamala Harris 53.6% to 45.8%. The vote numbers are still very small, but we are starting to see smaller rural counties in the western part of the state, like Russell County, beginning to report their vote totals. So far, there have not been many surprises yet on election night. Everything has gone pretty much how we expected it to. The 8 p.m. poll closings on the East Coast will be the first potential real test on if there will be any surprises and things will be shaken up. At 8 p.m., we have several states with their polls closing, including some very important key states which may have very important electoral significance. The states with poll closings right now are Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Washington, D.C., Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Tennessee. Let's take a look at the projections we can make at this time. We can officially call the state of Alabama and its 9 electoral votes will be won by Donald Trump. Vice President Harris will win the state of Connecticut and its 7 electoral votes. Delaware, the home state of President Biden, has been won by Vice President Harris, 3 more electoral votes added to her column. The District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, has also been won by Vice President Harris, 3 more electoral votes for her. The state of Florida and its 30 electoral votes, the home state of former President Donald Trump, is being categorized at this time as too close to call. Big portions of the state of Florida had their polls closed at 7 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. This poll closing is the remaining parts of the Panhandle, which closed at 8 p.m. So there's actually a large percentage of votes already reporting from Florida. We'll be getting to that in a few minutes, but Florida has now been characterized as too close to call. Next, the state of Illinois and its 19 electoral votes, the home state of former President Barack Obama, has been won by Vice President Harris. 19 more electoral votes added to her tally. The state of Maine splits its electoral votes by congressional district and allocates 2 electoral votes for the winner of the state at large. We can officially project now that the state of Maine, its 2 electoral votes, and its 1st congressional district have been won by Vice President Harris, meaning she will receive 3 electoral votes from the state of Maine. At the same time, we can project that Donald Trump has won Maine's 2nd congressional district, a more rural district than the 1st district, and that will add 1 electoral vote from the state of Maine for Donald Trump. In the state of Maryland, its 10 electoral votes have been won by Vice President Harris, and in the state of Massachusetts, 11 of its electoral votes have been called for Kamala Harris. Mississippi and its 6 electoral votes have been won by Donald Trump. The state of Missouri and its 10 electoral votes have also been won by Donald Trump. The state of New Hampshire and its 4 electoral votes is being categorized as too close to call. New Hampshire, a swing state in 2016 and somewhat of a swing state in 2020, has not received much attention this cycle, as polling has showed Vice President Harris very likely to win the grand state and leading in the polls substantially, but we're still going to count the votes until we feel confident enough to make a call. Too close to call for now. That, however, is not the case in the state of New Jersey, where its 14 electoral votes will be going for Kamala Harris. Oklahoma and its 7 electoral votes have been won by Donald Trump. And in the state of Pennsylvania, in its 19 electoral votes, the ultimate battleground state is too close to call. The polls in Pennsylvania have been incredibly tight for months now, well under the margin of error, and the state being decided in 2020 and 2016, both times by under 1.2% of the vote. Pennsylvania is expected to take a long time to call tonight, and maybe even tomorrow. Definitely a very important state to watch that may decide who wins the presidential election. We also have the state of Rhode Island and its 4 electoral votes being won by Kamala Harris. And the final state call, we have the state of Tennessee with its 11 electoral votes being won by Donald Trump. With all those calls factored in to the totals, we have right now 77 electoral votes for Vice President Kamala Harris and 76 electoral votes for former President Donald Trump. The map is starting to fill in a little bit more. We certainly have a ways to go. A very close election. Kamala Harris leading now by just 1 electoral vote. Now let's take a look at the key states up for grabs at the 8 p.m. hour and update on states that had previously had their polls closed. Starting with the state of Florida and its 30 electoral votes, it already has 81% of the vote in, as mentioned during the poll closings, that the state polls, most of them close at 7 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. We're now getting the rest from the panhandle. So a lot of the state is already in. In fact, 81% of votes have been reported in for the state of Florida. Right now, Donald Trump currently holds a very tight lead of 49.9% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 48.9%. Most of the big city areas in Florida, such as Tampa and Orlando, are already in. We are still waiting on some votes from the Miami-Dade area, inner city and suburban areas and surrounding counties, as the total ticks closer to 100. We fully expect Trump's lead to grow as more of the state's votes report in. Still too close to call for right now. Now to the state of New Hampshire and its 4 electoral votes, where only 3% of the vote is now in, and Vice President Harris holds a lead of 59.8% to President Trump's 36.5%. With the capital city of Concord being the only place to report votes so far from the Granite State. Lots of votes left to count. Now to the key bellwether state of Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral votes, the state that may pick the president. Only 1% of the vote is now in. Vice President Harris holds a lead over President Trump of 78.6 to 20.4%. Very few votes are coming in from the Philadelphia area, which explains why there's a massive lead right now for Harris. Still lots of votes are coming from there, but there's still plenty more votes to be counted from there as well, so we expect this to go on throughout the night. We're expecting to have a very long night with the state of Pennsylvania, and we'll have to wait and see how all the votes report in from the Keystone State. Now we're going to look at the key states who had their polls closed earlier in the night, starting again with the state of Georgia, where the state is now up to 13% of the vote in, and it has narrowed substantially, with Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump 49.7 to 49.6, extremely close. With still lots of outstanding vote left, we're missing lots of the surrounding Atlanta metro area and surrounding suburbs. We have ways to go in Georgia, but it's certainly starting to get very, very close. Now to the state of North Carolina, where 4% of the vote is reporting. Donald Trump has a lead of 65.4% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 32.2%. Most of the vote is coming from the rural counties in the eastern part of the state, specifically Beaufort and Craven. Lots of votes left to count in North Carolina. Now to the state of Ohio, where they are reporting the vote very, very quickly actually, now up to 33% of the vote in, with Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump 59.6% to 39.3%. We're receiving some votes out of Cuyahoga County, which is where Cleveland is, and getting some votes out of Hamilton County, where Cincinnati is. Lots of the remaining vote will come from counties which have lots of rural and suburban areas, which are expected to pad President Trump's numbers and boost his totals there. So please stay tuned for that. Ohio still too early to call. Next, we move to the Commonwealth of Virginia, with 22% of the vote reporting. Donald Trump holds a lead of 59.7% to Kamala Harris's 38.5%. More of the rural counties throughout the western part of Virginia and the southern border of Virginia with North Carolina have begun reporting in. We still have some ways to go on that. We're still waiting for votes out of the Virginia Beach area and the northern DC suburbs in Northern Virginia, which are expected to go heavily for Kamala Harris, which will definitely make the margins much smaller of Trump's lead right now. So far, only a few votes are in, but it does appear that Trump is outperforming his 2020 margins in Virginia against Biden. How much does he overperform those margins when all the votes are counted up? That remains to be seen. But for now, too close to call. Trump holds an early lead in Virginia. It is officially 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and we have a poll closing in just one state, the state of Arkansas. We can give you a projection right now. Here we go. In the state of Arkansas, 6 electoral votes, we can project that Donald Trump has won the state of Arkansas and its 6 electoral votes. And with that, Arkansas is added to Donald Trump's total. Trump now has 82 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 77. Now let's take a look at the very competitive key states that closed earlier in the night. Starting with the state of Florida, now 88% of the vote is reporting, and Donald Trump's lead has grown in the state. Trump now has 51.2% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 47.9%. We are getting very close to being able to make a call in the state of Florida, but we are still waiting for the final votes to come in before officially making a call, just for the purposes of being cautious and making sure we're not making any uncalculated mistakes. But it is certainly looking like Trump is going to win the state by a bigger margin than he did back in 2020. Checking in now in the state of Georgia, where 22% of the vote is reporting, Donald Trump holds a lead over Kamala Harris of 57.3% to 41.8%. So far, this has been very typical of how Georgia usually votes, where smaller rural counties report first, giving the Republicans a big lead in the state, and then the suburban areas and city areas in Georgia, like Atlanta and Savannah and their surrounding suburbs, count their votes and report them, and the Republican lead gradually goes down over the night as the Democratic votes increase, leading to a very close election result, as is expected to be tonight. So far, Georgia is not out of the ordinary at all so far and is going exactly how we thought. Still very close, long ways to go, too close to call at this time. Now we go to the state of New Hampshire and its 4 electoral votes, where votes are slowly starting to come in from Concord and the surrounding towns. One example is the town of Bow, which shows Harris is running similar numbers to Biden in 2020. Still, only 6% of the vote is in, so there's not really too much to go off of at this time, but still, votes are pouring in New Hampshire. Harris is leading Trump 58.5% to 39.6%. Now we go to the state of North Carolina, where there's been a large amount of votes reporting in actually a very short amount of time. 51% of the votes in North Carolina are now in. Vice President Kamala Harris has a lead over former President Trump, 53.6% to 45.3%. This is in large part due to big population centers in North Carolina, like Mecklenburg County, Wake County, and Cumberland County, which are home to Charlotte, Raleigh, and Durham, having some votes come in. A lot of the outstanding vote is going to come from counties that are expected to vote for Donald Trump, including rural and suburban counties. We're going to have to count all the votes because it is certainly possible for Trump to make up the margin and win, but we'll have to see how the votes come in before we can make any calls on that. A somewhat similar situation is happening in Ohio, where 51% of the votes are reporting. Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump 55.3% to 43.6%. Most of Cuyahoga County and Hamilton County are now in for Harris, and we are waiting for the rest of the rural counties to come in, which we fully expect to go for Trump. There is more than enough vote for Trump to win the state, and by a large margin, but still we have to wait for the votes to come in, count the votes, and make a prediction going further. Next, we're going to move to the state of Pennsylvania, where only 5% of the vote is reporting. Kamala Harris holds a lead over Donald Trump of 80.2% to 19%. This has not had much of a change from the earlier reporting, where some votes are coming from inner city Philadelphia and just a few rural counties around the state. Certainly there's a lot more votes to come in Pennsylvania, and we really don't have much of an indication of how Pennsylvania is looking at this time. And in the state of Virginia, where 32% of the state is reporting, Trump is leading 59.3% to Harris's 38.9%. Still plenty of votes left to count in Virginia, including from the big Democratic vote senators in Northern Virginia, so we have a long way to go. Still way too early to say whether Trump will be able to pull off an upset in Virginia or Kamala Harris will be able to hold on to the Commonwealth that Joe Biden won in 2020. It is now 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and we have a second huge poll closings of the night, including several key, very important battleground states. The states with their polls closing right now are Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Now let's take a look at what projections we can make at this time. Starting with the state of Arizona and its 11 electoral votes, we can call this race as too close to call between Vice President Harris and former President Trump. Too close to call in Arizona, a very important battleground state to watch for tonight. In the state of Colorado and its 10 electoral votes, we can project that Vice President Kamala Harris has won the state of Colorado. Kansas and its 6 electoral votes, we can project have been won by Donald Trump. Kansas goes for Trump. Louisiana and its 8 electoral votes have been won by Donald Trump. In the state of Michigan, 15 electoral votes, one of the most important battleground states of the election. We can say that Michigan right now is too close to call, very important one to watch for throughout the night. In the state of Minnesota, the home state of Kamala Harris's running mate Tim Walz, the governor of the state, we can say that Minnesota is too early to call. We expect Harris is favored to win the state, but we are waiting for more votes to be counted before we are able to make a projection due to the closeness of this race. Next, we go to the state of Nebraska, which, like Maine, is the other state in the country that allocates its electoral votes by congressional district. 1 electoral vote for each district, and then 2 for the state at large. We can project that 4 of Nebraska's electoral votes have been won by former President Donald Trump, and 1 of Nebraska's electoral votes has been won by the Vice President Kamala Harris, specifically coming from the 2nd Congressional District. And in the state of New Mexico and its 5 electoral votes, we can officially project that it has been won by Kamala Harris. A state that Joe Biden was able to win in 2020 by 10 points has now voted for Vice President Harris. Now to the state of New York, the original home state and birth state of Donald Trump. It has been won by Kamala Harris. It's very interesting. The Trump campaign wanted to win New York. They made an effort towards the end of the campaign to try and win the state. It looks like Harris is going to win the state of New York. However, the margin of which Harris wins the state by is expected to be smaller than past elections, where how Democrats performed in the state. Nonetheless, Harris wins New York, and its very large total of electoral votes. Now we go to North Dakota, where its 3 electoral votes are won by Donald Trump, and neighboring South Dakota, where its 3 electoral votes are also won by Donald Trump. Now to a very, very big important call, the state of Texas and its 38 electoral votes. Some polling showed it close, but the second biggest state by population in the country, Donald Trump has won the state of Texas and its 38 electoral votes. Very big win for Trump there. Now to the state of Wisconsin, another very important battleground state in this election. The polls have remained extremely tight leading up to Election Day. It is a very, very important state to both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's pathway to victory, and we can say right now it is too close to call in the state of Wisconsin. And lastly, the state of Wyoming and its 3 electoral votes, we can officially project have been won by Donald Trump. And with Wyoming and all the other states' projections done, we can look at the race to 270, where things stand right now. with Donald Trump receiving 149 electoral votes and Kamala Harris receiving 121 electoral votes, with currently 11 states being listed as either too close to call or too early to call. Now we're going to take a look at the key states where the polls have just closed, and in the states where the polls closed earlier in the night that are still too close or too early to call. Starting with the state of Arizona, with only 2% of the vote reporting, Donald Trump currently has a lead of 73.8% to Kamala Harris's 24%. Most of this vote is coming from Mojave County in northwestern Arizona, which is supposed to be a very Trump-friendly district. Still a long way to go in the state of Arizona. In the state of Michigan, where some of the counties in the state have their polls closed in the 8 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. time slot, so Michigan already has 15% of the vote reporting, and Trump has also gotten off to an early lead here in Michigan with 57.1% of the vote for Donald Trump to 41% of the vote for Kamala Harris. Michigan has several smaller counties full of rural and suburban areas that will turn out for Trump, which will give him a very early lead into the night. The question will be whether or not there's enough votes for Trump to hold that lead as more Democratic areas come in throughout the night. Still a long way to go in Michigan. We have to wait and see and count the votes. Now to the state of Minnesota and its 10 electoral votes, where only 1% of the vote is reporting. Kamala Harris has a lead over Donald Trump, 49.8% to 47.3%. Most of the votes are coming from the swing county of Carlton. The state we can characterize right now as too early to call because we expect Vice President Harris to win the state, but we're going to count the votes and be extra cautious until we feel comfortable enough with making a call. And in the state of Wisconsin, where there's only 1% of the vote reporting, Donald Trump leads Kamala Harris very narrowly at 52.3% to 46.2%, those votes coming from Winnebago County, a close county that Trump is projected to win by a few percentage points. Long ways to go in Wisconsin. And it is certainly going to be one of the closest battleground states throughout the entire country tonight. Now checking in on the earlier poll closings, starting with the state of Georgia, where 38% of the vote is now reporting. Trump has a lead of 57% of the vote to Harris's 41.9%. This continues the expected trend from 8:30 p.m. where the rural parts of Georgia are reporting strongly for Donald Trump, and we are still waiting for the more Democratic areas in Georgia like Fulton County and the surrounding suburbs to come in for Kamala Harris, which we expect to narrow the margin of Trump's lead. Still too close to call right now in the state of Georgia. The state of New Hampshire is now reporting 11% of the vote. Kamala Harris continues to have a lead of 57.5% to Donald Trump's 40.8%. Still lots of vote out in the towns of New Hampshire to count. So far, mainly Concord, and some votes in the Manchester area have come in for Kamala Harris. We're still waiting for votes out of the more Republican part of the state of Rockingham County and Hillsborough County, where a lot of more Republican-friendly voters than where Concord is. But we're still going to have to count the votes and get an idea of how the state is before we can make a call. Too close to call right now in New Hampshire. Now to North Carolina, where 75% of the vote is in, and Kamala Harris holds a lead over Donald Trump, a very narrow lead of 51.4% to 47.5% for Trump. Almost all of Cumberland County, Wake County, and Mecklenburg County are now in, and the outstanding vote is coming from areas that is expected to be very friendly for Trump. There is certainly enough votes out there for Trump to make up the margin and flip the lead in North Carolina, but we're going to have to wait and see for all the numbers to come in before making that call. Too close in North Carolina. In the state of Ohio, with 60% of the vote now in, Kamala Harris holds a lead of 53.2% to 45.6%. It is worth noting that all of Cuyahoga County and Hamilton County are in, and we are waiting on more from rural Ohio to come in for Trump, which when he does, we expect it will be more than enough to flip the state in Trump's direction and by a large margin. However, we're still waiting for more votes to come in before making that call. Now to the very important battleground state of Pennsylvania, where only 9% of the vote is reporting. Kamala Harris holds a lead of 70.3% to Trump's 25.6%. This is still a lot of votes from the Philadelphia area, being the majority of votes coming in at this time. Still lots of votes to count from the Philadelphia suburbs and throughout the rest of the state. Long ways to go in Pennsylvania. In the state of Virginia, where 42% of the vote is now reporting, Trump continues to have a lead over Harris in the Commonwealth with 58.6% to Harris's 39.6%. The vote still continues to come mostly from the rural, smaller counties of the state. We're waiting for large amounts of votes to come in from the northern Virginia DC suburbs and the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. Still lots of outstanding vote left to count in Virginia, and until that comes in, we cannot make a call in the Commonwealth. And now we have some breaking news and a major projection to make in the race to 270. We can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Florida and its 30 electoral votes. Florida, the home state of the former president, has been won by him and is an absolutely crucial win for his chances to become the president once again. Had Trump lost the state of Florida, his chances of winning this election were essentially all but over. Now, by winning the state, his chances to win the presidency are still very much alive and on the table. With greater than 95% of the vote reporting in the state of Florida, Donald Trump receives 52.2% of the vote to Vice President Kamala Harris's 46.2%. That is a margin of victory of 6 percentage points for Trump in the state, nearly doubling his margin of victory in the state from 4 years ago in 2020. Trump has won the state of Florida, and now taking a look at the map of the county votes in Florida, we see a lot of smaller red counties, including swing counties like Pinellas County, which is the one next to Tampa, where St. Pete is, and Monroe County in the southern tip of Florida, right next to Miami-Dade, which also Miami has voted further to right for Trump in 2024 than it did in 2020, in large part gaining to Trump's margin, and the state going from about 3 to now 6. This also follows the very impressive election results in the 2022 elections, where Governor Ron DeSantis won his race by a very large margin, over 20 points. And with adding the state of Florida to President Trump's column, that adds 30 more electoral votes in the race to 270. Trump now sits at 179 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris at 121 electoral votes right before the 10 p.m. poll closings. It is now 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and we have a poll closing in 4 more states, those states being the states of Iowa, Montana, the all-important swing state of Nevada, and Utah. Here's what we can tell you about them at this time. In the state of Iowa, the once toss-up state, we can project that it will go for Donald Trump. Iowa's 6 electoral votes have gone for Donald Trump. And in the state of Montana, its 4 electoral votes we can also officially project have been won by Donald Trump. In the state of Nevada, we can say that the state of Nevada right now is too close to call. Nevada, a state where the polls leading up until this day have been incredibly close, and we expect it to be a very close result. One of the tightest margins of victory in the entire country is what we're expecting tonight. Nevada, too close to call. And lastly, in the state of Utah, Donald Trump has won the state of Utah and its 6 electoral votes. And with that now, Donald Trump's electoral vote totals after these states is now up to 195. Vice President Kamala Harris's are 121. Now let's take a look at the states that are too close to call at this time. We will begin with a state where the polls just closed. The state of Nevada, currently only 1% of the vote is in. Trump has a lead over Harris at 77% to 19.8%. These few votes are coming from Lincoln County, Nevada, which is just outside of Clark County. and it's a county that Trump is expected to win. We have a long ways to go of counting votes in Nevada before we can start to get an idea of what the final vote totals will look like. Long way to go in Nevada. Looking at the states that previously had their polls closed, we will start with the state of Arizona, where there is now 59% of the vote reporting. Vice President Kamala Harris holds a lead over former President Trump with 54.9% to 43.9% of the vote. Harris has a lead right now due to counties such as Pima, Santa Cruz, and Apache coming in big numbers for her. Most of the remaining vote is coming from counties which are expected to vote for Trump, and from Maricopa County, the largest population county in the state, where their votes are situated in the county. It is expected to be a very, very heavy report for Donald Trump. Arizona right now is very close, and definitely one we have to keep an eye out for. Now we take a look at the state of Georgia, where 53% of the vote is reporting. Donald Trump has taken a lead there of 55.7% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 43.1%. There is still a lot of vote left to count in Georgia, especially from the Atlanta metro area. So we're going to have to watch Georgia for a while until those votes come in. We expect this lead that Trump has right now to narrow substantially, too close to call right now in the state of Georgia. Now we go to the state of Michigan, where Donald Trump leads Kamala Harris 55.8% to 42.3%, with only 31% of the state responding. Similarly, lots of smaller counties have been reporting for Trump, with larger population centers like Detroit, Grand Rapids, and Ann Arbor still not fully reporting their votes yet. We have a ways to go in Michigan before we get a clear picture of how the state is looking. Next, we're going to go to the state of Minnesota. As mentioned earlier, the home state of Kamala Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz. 33% of the vote is reporting, and Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump 62.9% to 35.2% of the vote. However, we have begun getting a good percentage of votes from the Twin Cities area, so we expect to see this margin narrow as more votes come in Minnesota that will likely pad Trump's numbers. The lead that Harris has right now, we expect will narrow quite a bit. New Hampshire currently has 25% of the vote in, but Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump 54.1% to 44.2%. There is still about 3/4 of the state yet to report its vote in, but New Hampshire typically counts their votes actually pretty quickly. So far from what we've seen, Kamala Harris is running closer to Biden's numbers in 2020 than Hillary Clinton's in 2016 when the state was a very close race. It seems to be right now that New Hampshire is looking like a state Harris actually is getting close to improving on Biden's numbers from 2020, one of the only swing states we're seeing that in right now. Now to the state of North Carolina, where we have a very, very interesting development happening underway. 87% of the vote is in, and it is an incredibly close race, with Vice President Harris leading former President Trump 49.5% to just 49.3%, a difference of just a few thousands of votes separating Trump and Harris at this time. This is due in large part to most of the Democratic-friendly counties in North Carolina being near finished reporting of the votes. There are still some being counted in the Republican counties that need to report. This is expected to grow for Trump. The trend has been Trump has been making up the ground and lead that Harris has had, and there is certainly enough votes out there for Trump to win the state. But the margins are so close, we're going to have to count all the votes in North Carolina before we can make a call. Absolutely a very interesting state to watch right now. Now we go to the state of Ohio, where Trump has actually jumped ahead of Kamala Harris, now leading 51.1% to 47.6%, with 75% of the vote reporting. We are feeling very confident that Trump is likely going to win the state of Ohio, but we are still waiting for some more numbers in the northern Cleveland suburbs from counties like Trumbull and Mahoning to come in before we can make an official call, just for the sake of caution. But Trump is certainly looking very strong in Ohio and is very likely going to win this state, and we can make a call in the not too distant future. Now we go to the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, where 25% of the vote is reporting, and Donald Trump holds a very narrow lead over Kamala Harris at 49.4% of the vote to 47.5%. There is still a lot of votes left to count all across the state of Pennsylvania, and we'll have to watch this one because this is certainly going to be one of the closest states to watch in the entire 2024 election. And as mentioned earlier, given how the polls have looked, this state very well may pick who wins and who loses this presidential election. Now we go to the state of Virginia, where 63% of the vote is in. Donald Trump continues to have a lead over Vice President Harris, 54.1% to 44.2%. However, it is worth noting that we are still waiting on the Northern Virginia, D.C. suburbs to report, so we will have to count the votes when they come in. We expect that will certainly hurt Trump's lead and potentially make up the ground Harris needs to win that state. But it is also worth noting that Trump is outperforming his numbers against Biden in 2020 when Biden won the state by 10 points. The question will be, once the DC suburbs come in, how much is Trump outperforming his margins in that area, and will it be enough to win the state? Lastly, the last swing state we have to go over is the state of Wisconsin that has 37% of the vote reporting. Donald Trump holds a narrow lead over Kamala Harris at this moment in time, Trump leading with 51.1% to Harris's 47.4%. There are still lots of votes to come in across the state, including from key suburban counties like Waukesha and Kenosha, and from big population centers as well, like Madison and Milwaukee. We have a long way to go in the state of Wisconsin before we could even come close to making a call. And we need to interrupt this very important break, and because we have a major projection to make in the race to 270 electoral votes. We can officially project that the state of New Hampshire, the Granite State, and its 4 electoral votes have officially been won by Kamala Harris. The vice president carried the state of New Hampshire, the one-time very close swing state, only 1,000 votes separating Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in 2016. Joe Biden in 2020 won the state by about 10% of the vote. And now Kamala Harris has won the state in very similar numbers, with only 40% of the state's votes are being reported. We are very confident with the outstanding vote in the state of New Hampshire. The percentages remain very similar, and Kamala Harris will finish just shy of Biden's 2020 margin of defeat of Trump. Harris right now is 53.4% of the vote. Trump has 44.9%. Looking at the state map of New Hampshire, Harris was able to run up the margins in counties like Hillsborough and Merrimack County, counties that Trump did very well in 2016 but went hard to Joe Biden in 2020 and stuck with Harris even more in 2024. Even though Trump was able to flip a county like Rockingham County and Carroll County, which voted for Biden in 2020 by only 2 points each. However, the increased vote percentages across those first 2 counties I mentioned were just too much for Trump to overcome in the state. And now, with New Hampshire being added to the vice president's column, the current race to 270 sits with Trump still at 195, Harris inching up a little bit to 125, leading into the 11 p.m. poll closings. It is officially now 11 p.m. on the East Coast, and we have poll closings in 4 very important Pacific Coast states, including the states of California, Idaho, Oregon, and the state of Washington. All of these states, we have a pretty good idea of how they're going to vote, so let's not waste any time. Let's jump in and make some very important projections. In the state of California, the largest state by population in the United States, Vice President Kamala Harris is the winner of its 55 electoral votes. By far the biggest electoral prize of the night. California goes to Harris. In the state of Idaho, Donald Trump has won its 4 electoral votes handily. Idaho goes for Trump. In the state of Oregon, with its 8 electoral votes, the projected winner is Vice President Harris. And lastly, in the state of Washington, Vice President Harris is also the winner of its 12 electoral votes. After those projections for the 11 o'clock hour, the electoral map right now has gotten a lot tighter. In fact, it could not be any tighter. Vice President Kamala Harris currently has 199 electoral votes to former President Donald Trump's, get this, 199 electoral votes. An exact electoral vote tie right now. Can you believe it? This election is getting incredibly tight as we move past 11 p.m. With no poll closings at 11 p.m. being categorized as too close or too early to call, we're now going to look back at the states where the polls closed earlier in the night that were too close to call at the time and perhaps are too close to call now. Starting with the state of Arizona, where a huge portion of votes have come in the past hour, 73% of the vote is now reporting. Vice President Kamala Harris holds a lead over Donald Trump still at 52.7%, to 46% for Trump. However, that lead has shrunk substantially as most of the outstanding vote that's come in has been coming in from smaller counties and from Maricopa County, and we expect that more of the outstanding vote to come in from those areas even more. We expect Harris's lead and margin to get even smaller, and there's certainly enough vote based on the estimates for Trump to make up the lead that Harris has, but we're going to have to count all the votes and find out to be sure. Too close to call in the state of Arizona. In the state of Georgia, 65% of the vote is in, and Donald Trump holds a lead over Kamala Harris of about 10 points. However, when you see the outstanding vote is still mostly from Democratic areas surrounding the Atlanta area and suburbs, the margin is expected to greatly diminish, but still, we're going to have to count the votes and be sure. Too close to call in the state of Georgia. The state of Michigan has 43% of its votes reporting in. Donald Trump holds a lead of 55% to Kamala Harris's 43.3%. Lots of the outstanding vote in Michigan is expected to go for Kamala Harris, but we still have to wait and see. Trump's lead is expected to diminish, but how much will it diminish and will it be enough to hold on? Those are the questions we're still looking for. Too close to call in Michigan, very closely one to watch. The state of Minnesota, where 50% of the vote is now reporting, Kamala Harris continues to have a big lead over Donald Trump in the state, with 57.4% of the vote to Donald Trump's 40.6%. Still, there are lots of votes out there for Trump to win in the state of Minnesota, but we do expect the margin that Kamala Harris has right now to likely hold and give her a win in the state. Still, we're going to count the votes and be cautious before making a call on that state. Now to the state of North Carolina, where we have a major development happening right now. 92% of the vote is reporting, and Donald Trump has taken the lead over Kamala Harris in the state. Trump now has 50.1% of the vote to Harris's 48.7%. This would be an absolutely crucial win for Trump's chances to win the election if he can hold on to it. We are going to count all the votes in North Carolina before making a call due to just how close this state is, but certainly very good news for the Trump campaign that Trump has pulled ahead in North Carolina right before the state of North Carolina tallies all of its votes up. The state of Nevada only has 10% of the vote reporting. Nevada, of course, was famous for this back in 2020 and 2016 for taking a long time to report its votes, and so far it seems to be following that same trend. Still, President Trump is off to an early lead of 68.7% to Kamala Harris's 24.5%. Lots of votes left to count in Nevada. We really don't have too much of an idea how that state will go right now. Long way to go there. Now we go to the state of Pennsylvania, where 44% of the vote has been reported, and Donald Trump has a lead of 55.5% to Kamala Harris's 41.9%. We still have lots of vote left to count throughout the state of Pennsylvania and pretty much every key area that there is. So far, we can say that Pennsylvania is playing out very similarly to 2020, where the votes that are coming in, Donald Trump is getting off to a big lead, and at the time, Joe Biden cut the margins back as more votes were reported, enough to eventually end up narrowly winning the state. It seems to be the path in Pennsylvania will be similar, where Trump's lead will continue to narrow as more votes come in. The question will be, does Trump have a big enough lead to hold on in Pennsylvania? That will have to count the votes and wait and see. Definitely too close to call in Pennsylvania. And we have the state of Wisconsin, where 59% of the votes have been reported. Donald Trump holds a tight lead of 51.5% to Kamala Harris's 47.1%. This is the moment in the night where Wisconsin starts getting really, really close, and the margins trickle down, likely under 1%, a margin of victory for whoever wins the state. Certainly one to watch for as well. And hold on, before we can move on, we are getting news that we have a major projection to make right now in the race to 270. We can officially project that in the state of Ohio has been won by Donald Trump, the president, the former president. Ohio's 17 electoral votes has gone to Donald Trump, with over 95% of the vote reporting. President Trump leads Kamala Harris 53.5% to 44.5%, a margin of victory of 9 percentage points. That's a 1-point improvement against his margin of Joe Biden back in 2020. And similarly, if you look at the map of Ohio, how the votes came in, Trump won every single county that he won in 2020 in the state of Ohio, and he even grew his margins in several of the counties across the state. A very impressive win for Trump, and the once key battleground state, now likely Republican state. And we have one more major projection to make in the race to 270. This time, we can project that the state of Virginia has been won by Kamala Harris, the vice president. She has won the state of Virginia in its 13 electoral votes. Virginia, the Commonwealth that Republicans were hoping to be able to win this election following Governor Glenn Youngkin's somewhat surprise win in 2021. and Trump's polling numbers being surprisingly very strong in the state, considering Joe Biden won it in 2020 by 10 points. The Trump campaign desperately wanted to win Virginia. It wasn't necessarily crucial or really important to their pathway to victory, but it's a state they certainly would like to have won. However, with over 95% of the vote reporting, Kamala Harris has 51.8%, Donald Trump is 45.3%, a margin of victory of 6.5 percentage points, which, even though, again, Trump lost the state, he lost in 2020 by 10 points, losing tonight Virginia by 6.5 points. He was able to improve his margin by 3.5% in a state that wasn't really considered a swing state until the final weeks of the campaign due to Trump making an effort in the state. Still, Virginia ends up being more of a likely Democratic state than a toss-up state, but nonetheless, Trump was able to improve his margins across the state, especially in the Virginia Beach area, where he's actually able to flip the county of Virginia Beach. But the election day turnout of the northern D.C. suburbs of Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William counties once again came in heavily Democratic and overpowered the rest of the state, where Trump and Harris almost split across the state, but the D.C. suburbs were able to flip the margin for Harris. So even though Trump was able to outperform how he did in 2020, it was still not enough due to the D.C. suburbs being so overwhelmingly Democratic. Virginia is a very important win for Vice President Harris, as if she lost the state of Virginia, that would be a very crucial state in her blue wall that she would have lost, and her chances of winning would certainly have taken a very big hit. So this is a very important win for her. And with those two states decided and added to the electoral votes columns, the updated race of 270 now has Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris narrowly with 216 electoral votes for Trump and 212 electoral votes for Harris. Certainly a long ways to go before either candidate is going to reach 270. Too close to call in the presidential race right now. We've officially reached midnight on the East Coast. It is now Wednesday, November 6, 2024, and we still do not know who will win the presidential election in 2024 of Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. However, we do have two poll closings to go after right now in the states of Alaska and Hawaii. Perhaps this may shed some light on how the presidential race is going. And no surprises here in the state of Alaska, Donald Trump will win the state's 3 electoral votes. Donald Trump will win the state of Alaska. And in the state of Hawaii, 4 electoral votes have been won by Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris winning Hawaii's 4 electoral votes. This brings in the race to 270 Donald Trump up to 219 electoral votes, Kamala Harris up to 216. We are going to check in on the states previously categorized as too close to call or too early to call earlier in the night, as the nation is getting anxious to see whether Vice President Harris or former President Trump will win the 2024 presidential election. With 81% of the vote in the state of Arizona, Kamala Harris has a lead of 50.1% to Donald Trump's 47.8%. We've seen more of Maricopa County come in, and as it has cut down Harris's lead by at least a percentage point. And based on the vote that is left out in the state of Arizona, we fully expect Harris's lead to continue to dwindle. Arizona needs to be watched very, very closely. For now, the state is too close to call, but certainly an interesting one to watch if Trump will be able to make up that margin in Arizona. To the state of Georgia, where 80% of the vote is reporting, Donald Trump leads with exactly 50% of the vote to Vice President Harris's 44.9% of the vote. In this situation, most of President Trump's vote is now in, and we're waiting for the rest of Fulton County, where Atlanta is, to come in, which is expected to greatly boost the Vice President Kamala Harris's total. Georgia still remains too close to call at this time. In the state of Michigan, 64% of the vote is now reporting. Donald Trump currently has a lead of 48.3% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 46.1%. There is still plenty of vote left to count in the state. Michigan is still anyone's race at this time, certainly too close to call. Nevada has 22% of the vote reporting now. Donald Trump has a lead of 54.4% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 42.8%. Most of this vote is coming from northern Nevada, and very little so far has come from Clark County. Once the vote comes in from that county, we expect we can get a more clear idea of how Nevada is looking in terms of which candidate will win. For now, the state of Nevada is too close to call. In the state of Pennsylvania, where 65% of the vote is in, Donald Trump has a lead of 49.9% to Kamala Harris's 44.7%. So far, Pennsylvania is still following the same path discussed earlier back in 2020, where Trump had a large lead. As more polling numbers came in throughout the night, Biden cut the lead down until it got very, very close, and Biden was able to eke out a narrow win. So far, this is happening about the same, except that Trump in some counties is outperforming his margins from 2020 by about 0.5 to 1 percentage point. That may end up proving to be very, very important when it comes to the final state results. We'll have to see how the rest of the state comes in, but certainly too close to call in Pennsylvania at this time. And in the state of Wisconsin, where 67% of the vote is now in, Donald Trump holds a lead over Kamala Harris at 49.5% to 44.9%. There seems to be a trend of Trump holding a lead in the Rust Belt states, but with each vote check-in that we do, his lead gets smaller and smaller as more Democratic votes come in. We're going to have to wait and see how much vote is left and from where in the state is it big enough for the lead that Trump has to hold on to the lead, and can Harris make that up? We're going to have to wait and see in Wisconsin. And breaking news, we have a very important projection to make right now in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota, the home state of Vice President Harris's running mate Tim Walz. We can officially project that Kamala Harris has won the state of Minnesota and its 10 electoral votes. And we can say with over 95% of the vote in, Harris leads Donald Trump 50.5% to 45.2%, a margin of victory of 5.3 percentage points. As for the state of Minnesota itself, there's not too much of a discrepancy on the map for how most of the counties voted in 2020 and 2024. The only differences were some of the margins of the counties got a little bit redder for Trump in some places, but not too many. The counties all stayed in the same party, meaning that ones that were won by Trump in 2020 stayed with Trump, the ones that were won by Biden in 2020 stayed with Harris. So that is called, for the state of Minnesota, goes for Kamala Harris. Too early to call earlier in the night, not much of a surprise, she won there. And before we can move on to the electoral map, we have one more major projection to make right now, a very, very big one. Donald Trump has won the very important battleground state of North Carolina and its 16 electoral votes. A state that Trump narrowly defeated Biden in 2020 by only 1.3 percentage points. Trump has won the state once again here tonight. A state that Democrats desperately wanted to win, because if they were able to win the state of North Carolina, that would severely hurt Trump's chances at winning back the White House, almost cutting off his path completely. Trump would need to make up with another toss-up state, or even a state like Virginia, to make up for losing North Carolina. Now with Trump winning North Carolina, he is well on his pathway and still has a good shot at winning the White House. Donald Trump, with over 95% of the vote reporting, received 50.3% of the vote, to Kamala Harris's 47.8%, a margin of victory of 2.5%, which is nearly doubling Trump's margin of victory from 2020. Still, the state of North Carolina was incredibly close and is absolutely a very competitive battleground state. North Carolina goes for Trump. As for the state map itself, North Carolina filled in very similarly to elections with Republicans in the past. Rural counties across the state filled in for Trump. Democrats ran up the margins in counties with large population centers like in Charlotte, Durham, and Raleigh. And as well, a cluster of heavily Democratic counties in the northeastern part of the state, getting kind of close to the Atlantic Ocean. That is all for the state of North Carolina. One more time, North Carolina goes for Donald Trump. Now checking in on the path to 270, Donald Trump has a narrow lead right now of 235 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 226 electoral votes. This is still a very incredibly tight election, which can truly go either way at this time, depending on just a few states that are still remaining. It is also worth noting that thus far, that right now, the current map, this is as far as Donald Trump got in 2020. Every state he's won tonight, he won in 2020. He did not win one more state in 2020. And for Trump to win the election, he has to now flip states that Biden won in 2020, and thus far, he has not yet done so. He's leading in a few places where he could do that, but so far in the night, Trump has not flipped a Biden state yet. However, as I mentioned, Trump is leading in a few states that Biden did win in 2020. Both candidates' paths to 270 electoral votes are still very much alive at this time. It is now 1 a.m. on the East Coast on the morning of Wednesday, November 6th. There are no more poll closings left. All we have now are a handful of closely watched states that we're still waiting to report their votes on who will decide the next president of the United States. So without further ado, we're going to check in on these very important swing states and see where they're at right now. In the state of Arizona, a state where Kamala Harris has led for most of the night, as more votes have come in, her lead has gotten much smaller and smaller, and now with 89% of the vote in, Kamala Harris has a lead of Donald Trump by only 0.1% of the vote, 48.7% to 48.6%, with a small chunk of votes still remaining to come in out of Maricopa County. It is truly anyone's guess as how the state is going to go right now. Arizona is absolutely incredibly close. However, we do feel like where this batch of votes is coming from, it is a pretty strong chance that whoever gets this vote and wins a majority of the votes coming in will be able to win this state. Have to wait and see for that. In the state of Michigan, 81% of the vote is now in, and Kamala Harris has just narrowly pulled ahead of Donald Trump in the state, with 48.2% of the vote for Kamala Harris to 47.9% for Donald Trump. This race is incredibly tight, and there's a lot of outstanding vote left for both candidates, so we're going to have to count all the votes before we can make a significant call in Michigan. Very, very close. Kamala Harris is now taking a narrow lead. The state of Nevada, with 45% of the vote reporting, now has Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump with 49.9% to 43.2% for Trump. Lots of votes have come in from Clark County for Kamala Harris, and they have broken her direction. The question is now whether there's enough outstanding vote for Trump to make up the lead that Harris has built for herself. That is going to be one to watch for throughout the night and early morning. Now to the all-important bellwether state of Pennsylvania, where 70% of the vote is reporting. Trump continues to hold a lead of 49.1% to 45.6%. However, clearly this lead is getting smaller and smaller with each update and will likely continue to get smaller until all the votes are counted. It is worth noting that all of Pittsburgh is now in, and we have all that's left is mainly from Democratic votes, waiting on the rest of the Philadelphia and surrounding areas to report. Very, very close in Pennsylvania. In the state of Wisconsin, Donald Trump continues to lead with 49.4% of the vote to Harris's 45.1%. Similarly to Pennsylvania, the more votes that come in should benefit Harris. However, how much is the question? It seems so far Trump is outperforming the polls in the state of Wisconsin by just enough to give him a lead for now. Very, very close in the state of Wisconsin. And before we can move on, we have a very important projection to make in the race to 270. That is the state of Georgia, and it's 16 electoral votes, where the declared winner in the state of Georgia is Donald Trump. Donald Trump has won the state of Georgia, a state Joe Biden flipped blue from red to blue in 2020. It is now narrowly flipped back to Donald Trump in 2024. And looking at over 95% of the vote in, Trump has 49.8% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 47.4%, a margin of victory of 2.4%. A very, very close race in Georgia. This is in large part due to Trump being able to make some gains in the surrounding Atlanta suburbs. Not substantial gains, but just big enough to boost his numbers slightly up from 2020, and the margins gave him an increase of about 2 percentage points, or over 2 percentage points, or 3 percentage points across the state. And now with the very, very important win of Georgia added to Trump's column in the race to 270, Donald Trump now sits at 251 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 226. It's worth noting that going into Election Day, it was discussed that Trump's easiest path to 270 involved him winning Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, and holding all the states he won in 2020. So far, it appears that plan is so far going according to plan. Now that all depends on the state of Pennsylvania and how it will vote. Georgia and North Carolina already going for Trump. At this point in the night, it's getting hard to imagine a pathway to 270 for either Trump or Harris without the state of Pennsylvania. It is now 2 a.m. on the East Coast in the morning of Wednesday, November 6th, and we are still eagerly awaiting to see who will be the next president of the United States. We are going to now check in on the remaining handful of battleground states and tell you where things stand right now. In the state of Nevada, where 60% of the vote is in, Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump 48.4% to 44.5%. More of the vote is coming from Clark County and from counties around the state. However, Trump's margins in the county are actually running a few points higher than he did in 2020, leading to a smaller lead at this point in time than Biden had in 2020 over Trump. A lead for Harris, but a narrowing lead as more votes are counted. It also seems the rest of the state outside of Clark and Reno County will come in for Trump as well. The question will be, is there enough for Trump to make up the margin in Clark and Reno to make up the deficit and win the state? Now to the state of Pennsylvania, where 84% of the vote is in. And take a look at this. Donald Trump holds a lead of 49.6% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 48.9%, a lead of 0.7% of the vote, and the ultimate swing state, the swing state of all swing states. Whoever wins the state of Pennsylvania, right now it's looking like will likely be able to win the presidential election, and it could not get any closer in the state of Pennsylvania than where we are right now. In the state of Wisconsin, 89% of the vote is in, and Donald Trump, and somewhat of a surprise based off what the polling data had, has Donald Trump up by 1.5%, 49.5% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 48% support exactly. However, the remaining vote out of the state in Wisconsin is expected to come in heavily for Harris, so we're going to have to count all the votes before we can make a call in the state. It is certainly going to get very, very close in the state. And hold on 1 minute, we have a very important projection to make in the race for 270. The state of Arizona and its 11 electoral votes has just been won by Donald Trump. After hours of Kamala Harris's lead slowly getting smaller and smaller in Arizona, Donald Trump finally jumped ahead of Harris with the remaining Maricopa County vote. And after that comes in, he ends up winning the state with over 95% of the vote in, at 50.1% of the vote, to Harris's 47.9%. An incredibly close and hard-fought matchup in Arizona. The state of Arizona itself, when it comes to the map, is looking very similar to its 2020 result. However, Trump was able to gain 1% of the vote in Maricopa County and in Pima County from his 2020 totals, which gave him just enough to boost his numbers and be able to win the state. And before we can move on, we have one more breaking news projection, and this is an absolutely major one in the race in 270. This is the state of Michigan and its 15 electoral votes. We can officially project that Vice President Kamala Harris has won the state of Michigan with 49.3% of the vote to Donald Trump's 48.1%, a margin of victory for Harris of 1.2% of the vote. Trump actually outperforming his voting percentage in the state from both 2020 and 2016. However, Harris was able to capture 49.3% of the vote and hold on enough to win the state. Trump was able to make very marginal gains in the counties surrounding Detroit and Grand Rapids. However, it was just not enough to make up the huge margins Harris was able to get from those cities themselves. A very impressive showing for Trump in the state of Michigan, but a win for Harris and a very necessary one that keeps her chances in the election alive at this time. If she lost the state of Michigan, her chances of winning the election would probably be all but gone, following the calls in Michigan and Arizona. The race, we can now say, to 270 appears to be in the home stretch, with Donald Trump sitting at 262 electoral votes and Kamala Harris at 241 electoral votes. Now just 3 states remain on who will decide the next president of the United States: Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. We have reached 3 a.m. on the morning of Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. 3 states remain uncalled in the presidential race as people around the nation remain awake late into the night and now early morning, waiting to hear who will be the next president of the United States. We are going to check in on all the states currently uncalled, starting with the state of Nevada. With 74% of the votes reporting, Kamala Harris has a lead over Donald Trump in the state of Nevada at 47.9% to 46.2%. We still have about 1/4 of the state of Nevada that remains, and Trump's chances at winning this state have improved since the previous check-in at 2 a.m. Still very, very close there. In the state of Pennsylvania, with 92% of the vote now reporting, Donald Trump holds a very narrow lead of 49.3% to Kamala Harris's 48.6%, a margin of just 0.7% in the state of Pennsylvania. Very, very close race. A few tens of thousands of votes separating the president and the vice president in the all-important battleground state. And with 93% of the vote in the state of Wisconsin, Donald Trump holds a 1% lead over Kamala Harris at 49.1% to 48.1%. However, there is still some outstanding vote that we're waiting on that there's a good chance it'll go for Vice President Harris, so we're waiting on that vote to come in before we can make an official call in Wisconsin. The race at 270 is so incredibly close and will likely continue on even further into the evening. Very, very close race. It is 4 a.m. on the East Coast on the morning of Wednesday, November 6th, 2024, and we have a very, very major projection to make right now. We can officially declare a winner in the 2024 presidential race, a race that will go down in history as a very hard-fought race with several unexpected twists and turns, ups and downs, very contested and tight polling data, and political markets showing a very even race, and a current president suspending his candidacy for president and endorsing his vice president. It's all come down to today, to this night, election night, November 5th, 2024, and we can officially project that the 47th president of the United States, the president-elect, will be the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida, and the vice president will be his running mate, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio. We can officially make this call after we can project the state of Pennsylvania, the state that pushed Donald Trump over the edge in 2016 and got him elected president, has done so once again in 2024. The state of Pennsylvania we can officially call for Donald Trump, with over 95% of the vote reporting. Donald Trump received 49.3% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 48.9%, a margin of victory of just 0.4% of the vote, closer than both the numbers and margins of 2020 and 2016 margins of victory in the state. Donald Trump was able to win the state of Pennsylvania by slightly gaining on his 2020 margins in some of the suburban counties outside of Philadelphia, like Bucks County and Northampton counties, and being able to flip the county of Erie. That was Trump in 2016. Trump won that county. Biden won it back in 2020. Trump has flipped it in 2024. An incredibly close win for Trump, but an absolutely crucial and critical win for him. Now he sits at 281 electoral votes. He has passed the threshold of 270 electoral votes needed to win the White House. Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States, and officially cuts off Vice President Kamala Harris's pathway to reaching 270. It is 7 a.m. on the East Coast in the morning of Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. We have called the presidential election for Donald Trump, doing so by winning the state of Pennsylvania at 4 a.m. However, we do still have two states left outstanding at this time, the states of Wisconsin and Nevada, and we can make a call now in one of those states. The state of Wisconsin and its 10 electoral votes, we can officially project after a very hard-fought election, has narrowly been won by Donald Trump. Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, doing so with over 95% of the vote in, 0.2% of the vote difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's 49.2% and 49%. An extremely close election, one of the closest in the country, Even though with the absolute thinnest of margins, Wisconsin will be giving its 10 electoral votes to Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump. The counties statewide voted in Wisconsin similar to how they did in 2020. However, Trump was able to make some inroads in some suburban counties surrounding Madison and Milwaukee, such as Sauk, Greene, Kenosha, Racine, and Columbia counties. Trump, however, did not flip any of the counties that he did not win in 2020. He did not flip any blue, but he was able to boost his margins in several counties, just enough to be able to give him the win in the state in a very, very close way. With Wisconsin added to Trump's total, he is now up to 291 electoral votes. Harris is at 241, and all that remains now is the state of Nevada. It is now 2 p.m. on the East Coast on Wednesday, November 6, 2024. We have called the presidential election for Donald Trump by giving him the state of Pennsylvania at 4 a.m., and we followed that up by giving Trump the state of Wisconsin at 7 a.m. There's only one state remaining, and that is the state of Nevada, the only state yet to be called. Until right now, we can officially make a call in that state, and President-elect Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States, soon to be, has won the state of Nevada by the absolute slightest of margins. With over 95% of the vote reporting, Donald Trump has received 48.8% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 48.6% of the vote, a margin of victory of just 0.2%, tying Wisconsin for being the closest margin of victory in this entire election cycle. Trump was able to win the state of Nevada by marginally improving his percentages in Clark County, where Las Vegas is, and Washoe County, where Reno is. And that, in combination with his vote totals in rural Nevada, which definitely gave big numbers for him, was just enough for Trump to be able to eke out a victory in a very, very important and highly contested swing state this cycle. And with Nevada being called, we can officially add it to the 2024 electoral map, where Donald Trump finishes with 297 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 241 electoral votes, one of the closest elections we've had in the 21st century for the United States, just in between the elections of 2016 and 2004 in terms of closeness. And that will officially do it for my 2024 election night full prediction. If you watched the video all the way through, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. It shows that you were just as much interested and infatuated with this election as I am. I really hope you enjoyed the video because it took a ton of time and effort to make, to write, to edit, produce the video. And I would really appreciate it if you could give this video a like and leave a comment below saying if you enjoyed the video, why you did and such. And if you really enjoyed it, by clicking subscribe to my channel and sharing the video to all your friends and family, it would absolutely mean the world to me. If you really enjoyed this video, also please remember to keep an eye out for other videos I've been posting before and will be posting in the future on my channel. I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading to the election and through election day, so please stay tuned for that. For now, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I am Anth Predicts Politics, and this has been my 2024 Election Night Prediction.